Thank you for joining us today. I'm Delia Johnson, the Director of Programs with the Military Family Advisory Network. It's hard to believe it, but you are joining us for the very first virtual event of 2022. Happy New Year. The start of the new year is an opportunity to think about your health and wellness goals. I don't know about you, but for me, that usually means with the New Year's resolution to maybe eat a little healthier coming out of the holidays. A lot of us grew up actually learning about the food pyramid in school, and maybe you still struggle with how to read a nutrition label. And that's why we're doing today's series on food matters. And hopefully by the end of today, you'll know how to stock your pantry, build a balanced plate, and know how to avoid some food waste in your home. Now, whether you're receiving food at an event that's being hosted by MFAN, you're going to your local food bank, or you're purchasing at your local commissary, we want to make sure you have some tips on how to eat healthy and how to avoid food waste. Today, we're thrilled to have join us Alicia Valdez and Sarah Viscoli, who are two professionals in the nutrition field, and they're going to share some resources and tips with us on how you can prepare healthy and nutritious meals for your families. We're so grateful for their time today, and I want to stop now to let both of them introduce themselves to our viewers.
Hello, Delia. Thank you for having us here today. I really appreciate it. Again, I'm Alicia Valdez. I'm a registered dietitian. I've been a dietitian for 15 years. I've worked with the Navy and in healthcare and in the fitness industry.
And I'm Sarah Viscoli, and I'm not yet a registered dietitian. I'm still an intern, but I will be done soon, about a couple more months, and then I will also take the exam and be a registered dietitian.
Well, Alicia, Sarah, thanks to both of you for being here, and good luck on that exam. We all remember what it's like to be an intern. So let's go ahead and dive right into our content today. There's a lot of information out there nowadays about healthy eating and what the word healthy even means. And when we were preparing for this, we learned a lot about the USDA MyPlate. And that's a new program for a lot of us who are watching today, and would love if you could take a minute to walk us through what the USDA MyPlate is and what we should be putting on our plates to eat a little healthier.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. So we've taken the USDA MyPlate and have shown how you should be preparing your meals for the most part, as much as possible on a daily basis. So taking the food groups, if you learn them from the food guide pyramid growing up, this takes it to the plate and shows you how to put it on your plate appropriately. In a traditional American diet, we eat too much grains and protein and not enough fruits and vegetables. So this shows you how they should be portioned on your plate. Ideally, you should be having 3 meals a day with 3 of these food groups at each meal. And then you would ideally be meeting your goals that you would need at the end of the day. Just some things to focus on as well when you're determining which types of food to have. For the grain section, try to focus on whole grains as much as possible, finding what you like, whether it's quinoa, brown rice, 100% whole wheat bread. For protein, having some lean protein, so it's very visible fat that you can see, very little visible fat that you can see. So poultry is really good, and then lean meat and pork as well. So some ideas to make this plate with some food ideas. So if you're having spaghetti, so maybe, not always have the garlic bread or breadsticks with the spaghetti, throw in a salad or green veggies. I love to do that with my family. And then, Taco Tuesdays are really popular, trying to maybe not always have the beans, rice, and chips along with the tacos and tortillas, maybe cutting back or throwing in some veggies there as well.
I love those tips. Those tips are great because I think all of us have that kind of, seeing the plate visually is fantastic because you just instinctively take the thing you like the most and fill up your plate with it. So making sure that we put those veggies on that half the plate is a great visual for all of us.
And if I just take 1 second here and talk about fad diets. So a lot of things are in the media today about fad diets, the keto diet, Atkins diet, paleo. I just want to mention that any diet that completely eliminates one of these food groups is not something that really is long-term sustainable and will meet your nutritional goals on a long-term basis. So really be cautious of those. And again, just in general, focusing on portion sizes of all of the foods that you choose. And again, incorporating half of your plate as fruits or vegetables would be appropriate.
That's fantastic. So I think the key to building that healthy plate is starting at the grocery store, kind of when you're going groceries, what you put in your pantry, what you put on your shelves at home. So for everyone watching, are there tips you can give us on kind of when you head into that grocery store? How do we pick the healthiest products for our families? What do we put in our cart, and how do we walk around that grocery store to find those items?
So a traditional layout of the grocery store, as you see on the screen, has more of the fresh, less processed foods around it. And then in the middle would be the more processed foods, but not always. So yes, in general, we want to hit the produce, the bread, the fresh meat and the dairy and eggs that is around the store. And they do this on purpose, so they put it in the different parts of the store that are further from each other. You've got to walk through the middle. And so you're potentially buying more than you would if you didn't have to go to both ends of the store. However, there are some good options in the middle part of the store that I'd like to point out. So tuna, canned tuna is a great option, lean protein, minimally processed. And then you have your packaged, rice and beans that are minimally processed as well. And then even canned veggies. So if you're unable to have access, especially different parts of the seasons, if you're unable to have access to fresh produce all the time, canned veggies can provide nutrients as well that are very important. And again, would be a better choice over, chips always or things like that. A tip, if you are worried about sodium in the canned foods, you can rinse with water before you pour or even if you pour the vegetables in your pot, just rinse it and drain the water off a couple of times, and that will actually remove some of the sodium.
That's a great tip. That's actually not one I've heard before. So, which is also leads to my next question is, I struggle often with when I'm in the grocery store looking at the nutrition labels nowadays, kind of what should I be looking for? The branding, there's all types of different words out there to kind of sucker you into thinking something is healthy. So what should I be looking for when I'm reading a nutrition label on these pantry staples at the grocery store?
Yeah, so there's a few things that I like to point out that I let people know about when I provide education. So first thing is to consider that the nutrition label is based on what the company that packages the food is saying a portion size is. So it may not always relate to what dietitians or nutrition professionals are telling you what portion sizes are. So it's very important to understand that everything listed here is based on that. So at the top, you're going to see what their serving size is. So here, the serving size is 2/3 of a cup, and then how many servings are per that container. So that tells you, if you eat the entire package, how much you're consuming. So we want to look, calories are important. In general, we say to try to meet, 15 to 2,000 calories a day, depending upon how active you are. And so trying to just be aware of that. The items that here are labeled here in green refer to heart health, and too much fat intake can lead to a couple of things over time. Can lead to heart disease if we're having unhealthy fats, and then it can also lead to weight gain because fats contain a lot of calories. And so we want to focus on the green here. So trying to have low levels of saturated fat in the diet, which again is going to be more present in the animal products that have fat in it. And then completely trying to avoid trans fat from the diet. And you will find that on food labels if it says if there's any hydrogenated oils in the ingredient list. So while it may say trans fat 0 on the food label, if it has hydrogenated oils in the ingredient list, you are going to be consuming some trans fat. And then cholesterol, we want to try to stay below 200 milligrams of cholesterol a day for a general heart healthy rule. And then sodium, again, sodium more so if you have any chronic diseases such as renal disease or any other heart diseases. So trying to keep that sodium between 1,500 and 2,000 milligrams per day. In the yellow, this is talking about things you should look for to have more in your diet. So we want to try to increase the fiber intake, and then protein. So again, that lean protein, and then trying to have very little added sugars to the diet. So that's what processed foods do. They strip some of that natural goodness that's in the food, and then they add back sugars to kind of, bulk it up. And so we really want to try to make sure we're trying to stay less than 50 grams of added sugars per day. And then also in yellow that is at the bottom is the vitamins and minerals. So there's certain vitamins and minerals that have to be listed there. You see them here: vitamin D, calcium, iron, potassium. So again, just trying to make sure that if your foods are having, showing that they're good sources containing of those nutrients, then it's likely that they're a healthier choice.
So I love how you said natural goodness. So speaking of natural goodness, how do we help our families at home who have kiddos who are very averse to vegetables at dinner, which I know some of us have those in our homes? How can we work on getting more vegetables into our diets at home, especially for those who really don't like to see them on their plate?
Yes. So the best thing, again, as I mentioned, now that we kind of know how much should be on our plates at a meal, is setting that example ourselves. So I have 2 little girls, and I make sure that my husband and I, we are all served the same food. We may eat at different times, but we're all served the same food for dinner, and that's it. So having that, for your kids to see you eating the same foods as well. And then, so way to like kind of blend them into foods where they might like it would be like, some stir fries, some fried rice. And again, you use that brown rice or even half and half, white and brown rice, and you're kind of meeting 2 components there. There's also some products on the market if you're able to have them, like the rice cauliflowers or, rice mashed potatoes, and then even like the pizza crust, cauliflower pizza crust, are some ideas. You can make sausage. You can, blend up some carrots into some spaghetti sauce. Snacks, having vegetables as snacks instead of other things traditionally that we might have. And then also, again, understanding, your child's taste buds will change and over time, and the more you introduce the foods to them, the more likely they're going to then be acceptable. But if you happen to have a child that does like fruit more than vegetables, understanding that fruit can be that alternative. So if they're eating, appropriate servings of fruit per day, then you don't have to worry too much about the vegetables.
I love all these recipes nowadays that are sneaking things in craftful ways, like blending them into the sauce. And, I think last week I saw a recipe that had black beans and brownies, and my mind was blown. It's like, who puts black beans in brownies? That's crazy. So those are fantastic tips for our families. I don't know about you guys, but I didn't realize that being an adult would be every single day hearing the question, so what's for dinner? What are we cooking tonight? What's for dinner? Every single night.
You hear that at breakfast, what's for dinner? And I'm like, we haven't even got through lunch yet.
Exactly. All of us right now are probably mentally putting our shopping list in our heads to make sure we know what's for dinner tonight. So what are some resources that you can recommend for our families who are watching to find some quick and easy, but also healthy meals to cook for their families at home?
Yeah, so the MyPlate website, USDA website is a great organization, and it's a great website to go to get any sort of cooking tips. There's also feedingamerica.org that has great, lower cost types of recipes if that's interested for your family. And then also a couple of programs such as WIC that and SNAP as well, that focus more on healthy and low cost meals. And then also the commissary as well. So I've personally created some things using the commissary's website. So that way I know what their recipes are that they're suggesting. So ideally you should be able to go and shop at a commissary and get everything you need for those recipes as well.
Fantastic. So we just wanted to spend the first part of our program today really focusing on what do I put on my plate? How do I read a label? The healthy side of the house as we're talking about food. But would love to kind of switch gears a little bit here in the program and talk about something that, was new to MFAN and that we recently learned, that there's approximately 30 to 40% of our food supply that's being wasted every day in the United States. And so would love to talk a little bit with you both about how can we all work together to reduce food waste in our country?
Yes, thank you, Delia, for mentioning that, because indeed we do have a big problem regarding food waste in this country, and not just in our country. There's several other parts of the world that have this issue. And there's just several ways that we can mitigate that, and we can especially start in our home. So I'm sure many of us know that the reason that happens, that we often realize we waste a lot of food, is that we went to the grocery store, we bought too much, whether things were on sale or we just went to the grocery store hungry and we just had a bigger stomach, or what do you say, bigger eyes than a stomach. And we just wanted to basically purchase all this food, or we wanted to try a new recipe and we only needed a small amount for it. and then the food ends up sitting in the fridge and eventually goes bad if we don't, come up with a new recipe to use it for. And so I'm sure many of us do this, that if we know something has been sitting in the fridge for a while, we tend to check for the date or, do the sniff test or smell test. And so that is one thing that I want to educate our viewers on today a little bit, is the different types of dates. Because I find that something that a lot of us do is we see the date, we see it expired, we just toss it out. But in fact, there are several different dates and they have different types of meanings. And this is actually something that accounts for 20% of food waste, is basically misunderstanding the dates. So as you can see on the screen here, we have the different types that I'm sure we've all seen before. So one of the very common ones that we may see often is the best by date or best if used by or before date. And that one really, it's not so much of a safety date. It's really more so to indicate when a product will still be at its best flavor and have its best quality, so you can still consume a product after that date. The sell by date is similar. It's once again not a safety date. It's really more so for the stores to know how long can they basically sell an item. So I would definitely suggest with the sell by dates, do purchase the item before that date if you see it in the store. However, for example, one item I always like to bring up is eggs, right? So you may purchase eggs, you may see, okay, in 2 days they expire, right? But if you look at that website below, the Food Keeper app, it will tell you that eggs will remain in good condition for 3 to 5 weeks. So that is how much time you have. And the date may really expire within a few days of your purchase. But so that app right there is really a good resource to have to look up how much time do you have, how long will an item retain its quality and be, good for. And then the other date is a use by date. So that one, once again, it's not necessarily a safety date unless it is for infant formula. And that one too is just a date that's recommended for how long a product will be at its peak quality. And then the freeze by date, that one is your date that an item should be frozen by to maintain its peak quality. Once again, not a safety date. And then lastly, we have the expiration date, which is more your, how should I put it? That's your kind of definite date. So, if something has expired and has been expiration date on it, I would say toss that out. And always, of course, use your best judgment, look at items. Do they not smell good or do they look like they're having mold on it? Of course, things can spoil, but these are really the dates that we should try to understand a little bit better to reduce the food waste. And again, using that app, it can also help you, assist you in determining how long an item will stay fresh in the freezer, or sorry, in the fridge.
Yeah, Sarah, I'm so glad you brought these up today, because I remember when I first learned about them, I was shocked. I just thought everything was an expiration date. And so in terms of food waste, guilty as charged. I was probably one of your number one offenders, because I would see the date and I would say, oh, it's past the date, I've got to throw it away. And so now that I know this, when I learned this about a year ago, it's incredible, because now I'll look at everything so closely. I'm like, we're good. Because I hate wasting food. So thank you for clarifying that for our families today. So if we go to the store, maybe we do buy a little bit too much, or we go to a bulk store and buy something, in bulk because it's more cost effective for our family. What are your recommendations on how we can keep that food safe, good to use, and be effective at home with using this product rather than throwing it away?
Yes. So as we've mentioned before, there's also freeze by dates, right? But even if an item doesn't have a freeze by date, freezing foods is one of the best ways that we can reduce food waste and even just be prepared if we ever have one of those days or weeks where we just don't have time to go to the grocery store. And we just also would like to prevent from ordering out every day, you can freeze pretty much any food and basically have a quick meal ready if you need it to. And so as I mentioned, you can freeze almost any food. There is some that I would maybe suggest not to freeze. So for example, canned items, just to make it easier, you would want to probably remove the item from the can, put it in a more freezer-friendly storage container or Ziploc bag, whatever you prefer, and freeze it that way. Or, even like eggs in a shell potentially, or like foods that have a high water content. I'm sure you've maybe frozen or tried to freeze lettuce before, or maybe watermelon or cucumbers, and then you thaw them and you realize those did not freeze well. So, I would suggest against these items, but really for the most part, you can freeze just about anything. And the great thing about freezing is that as long as you froze the item before, its expiration date or before it went bad, it will pretty much like stay in the fridge like good for forever, as long as you kept the freezer always at that 0 degrees Fahrenheit or less. And the other great thing about freezing is, besides maintaining its quality, it also retains the nutrients. And that's always something that we recommend is, or suggest, if individuals say, oh, I can't afford fresh produce, you don't have to. Canned items, frozen items, they retain their nutrients very well. And so going back to the items that we can freeze, I feel like for the most part, we know what we can freeze, but I find that oftentimes the tips that I provide, people are definitely surprised that, oh yes, I can do all these things. So the things that I like to bring up is meats, right? So we tend to all freeze our meats, but something that I personally started doing that I like to do, it may take a little bit of time the day off, but it's basically preparing them in certain ways. So for example, if I buy a bag of chicken in bulk, right? What I tend to do is I take the chicken breasts and I just cut them up in different ways. So I might make chicken cutlets, I might make cube chicken, and then I put them in Ziploc bags, date them, write on it what I made. And this way you have, the chicken prepared in whatever format you need it in for a recipe, and you can just easily thaw it. Or you can also marinate the chicken ahead of time, put it in the Ziploc bag. That way, once again, thaw it, and you have a quick and easy meal ready if, you have a long work day. Other items that I like to bring up is bananas. So peeled bananas, unfortunately, that core fruit is the one that goes bad quickest in my household.
Yes,
and for some reason, even though I always provide these tips, I'm always the one who doesn't follow it, and I end up tossing the banana salad. But it's a great way to freeze bananas, berries, especially if you are one of those individuals like me who loves berries and then they're not in season and they get really expensive. You can easily freeze those, or spinach, and have these on hand for smoothies. So it's always a great way to add these things to smoothies and basically beef them up a little bit. And the other thing I also like to bring up, because I think a lot of us, and it's another item that gets wasted a lot, and a lot of us may not be aware that we can freeze it, is herbs. So I'm sure, many of us like to buy the cilantro or parsley or other herbs to just sprinkle on top of a meal. And then, there's ways to store it to like make it last longer in the fridge. However, eventually they'll go bad. So what I like to do with those is, you chop them up, you put them in like a little freezer tray, about like a tablespoon each. And then you can either put water in it, or you can put broth in it, or you can put olive oil in it, or even butter, and freeze it that way. And then you can have it ready for, soups, condiments, whatever you would like. It's perfect. And it's perfect because also what I always like to bring up is parsley, for example. It's such a powerhouse of nutrients, right? So we can add additional nutrients like vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin K to our meals just through these herbs. So that's always something I like to bring up, and many people are surprised that that's something, you can easily store them like that.
I love that you just called parsley. I love that you just called parsley the powerhouse of nutrients. Like you can tell we have a nutrition professionals on the call with us today, because I'm not sure any of us would ever call parsley a powerhouse. So I had to interrupt you and say that. I love that.
And I might be biased just because I absolutely love parsley. So
I'm more of a rosemary type of girl. So
Well, and at the beginning, Sarah, you had mentioned that, you buy something for a recipe and you only need a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons, and then you end up wasting it. And so your tip on the herbs is just like life-changing. To be able to put that in an ice cube tray and have it ready to go. 1, makes it quick and easy for those of us who are busy, but 2, eliminates food waste. So that's a great tip for our families watching today.
And like Alicia mentioned, in terms of reducing sodium, we often suggest to use herbs to decrease the sodium content of a food and still give it that good flavor.
Fantastic. So go right ahead. Sorry, excuse me.
Sorry. No, I just wanted to quickly talk a little bit about the thawing of the foods, just to make sure that we covered that as well. Because I know that some of us probably, tend to put something on the counter if we needed to quickly thaw for that evening. Not really the safest methods. So the 3 safest methods for thawing would be the best one in the refrigerator. Obviously, that will take a little while, so you have to plan ahead. But that's your safest method. The other method would be under cold water. So you place, whatever item you have, make sure you place it in a water safe or Ziploc bag container and put it under cold water, change the water, every 30 minutes or so, just to make sure it keeps thawing. And then lastly, we have the microwave. Also very quick method, just make sure that when you do microwave it, you cook the food like immediately after, because it can start warming up in certain areas potentially. So, lead to potentially that microbial growth, which we do not want. And if you want to refreeze any items, you can. I would just suggest that, so if you thawed it in the fridge, that is fine. You can pretty much refreeze it again without, having to previously cook it. But if you thaw it under the cold water or in the microwave, I would suggest you cook it like before you put it back in the freezer.
Fantastic tips. And those are the things that I think as we all start cooking as adults for the first time, that's the thing you call your mom or your dad about. And you're like, wait, how do I do this? Can I refreeze this? I didn't cook it tonight. So those are the tips that we all have to learn as part of adulting. So thank you, Sarah, for sharing that to make sure that we're all eating this food safely. So we like to keep these sessions short, sweet, so that our families can get some information and move on with going to cook dinner tonight, as an example. So I want to thank Sarah and Alicia for your time today, for all of this knowledge. Knowledge is power. And when it comes to eating healthy and food safety, the tips that you've shared today, the resources you've shared today are incredibly valuable. So thank you both for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us today.
You're very welcome. Thank you again for having us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with that said, we'll wrap up our session today. These virtual events were started as part of our Million Meals Challenge that wrapped up at the end of 2021. But now that we're all looking ahead in 2022, we want to let you know that we are going to continue to work on food insecurity in 2022 at MFAN. We held food events across the country in the areas of Fort Hood, Texas, Fort Bragg, North Carolina, Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington State, and Hampton Roads, Virginia. We will continue those events throughout 2022. So please sign up for our newsletter or go to militarymeals.org to find out when we will be in your neighborhood for a food event. You can also find additional resources on our website if you're not in those communities, if you're in need of additional food support. All of the content from today will also be shared on our website and on our social media, so that you can refer back to the fantastic resources that Sarah and Alicia gave us today. And as always, we want to understand from you what resources you would like to see in the future at these virtual events, and also what you thought about our content today. So go to the website on your screen, milfanet.org/food matters, to take a short survey and give us your feedback. And qualifying families can receive a $25 grocery gift card while supplies last. We would greatly appreciate your feedback to make sure we're bringing the content to you that you'd like to see. So again, I want to thank our speakers for sharing this wealth of information. The USDA MyPlate was something I had never heard of until we met Sarah and Alicia. And so just learning that is a great tool and trick to bring home to our families. We're grateful to you both. We're grateful to everyone who's watching, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks and have a great day.